how's it going?
What's up, Trovarsi? How's it going?
It's good. Good to be here.
Everybody, please join me in welcoming Trovarsi. Thank you so much for taking the time to do this interview. It's super awesome to have you on.
Yeah, thanks for asking me. I appreciate it.
Cool. So I just wanted to let everybody know we're gonna have like open questions at the end. If you have a question as we're going, definitely throw it in the chat, and then we can try and get through those. So again, welcome everybody. Cool. So how's it going out in LA?
It's going good. It's still warm. Although we did have a rainstorm out here, so that was good. But other than that, I can't complain about the weather really. So
yeah, super nice. So your studio looks really nice and ambient. I really like it. It's dope.
Thanks. Yeah. It's a little messy, but you know how it is. Like I'm always shuffling modules and gear around my setup, so I feel like there's always a slight mess happening. So
I can't remember. I saw a quote one time. It said something about a clean studio. Like people post their studio pics, and if they're like super clean and nice, like that it's not being used. I don't know how much truth there is to that, but so my studio's a mess all the time.
Yeah, for me, I mean, I try to circle back and clean up, just because the flip side is having a huge mess makes it chaotic, and then you can't focus. But at the same time, I'm always using different pieces of gear and modules and stuff. So there's always going to be some sort of shuffle or flux or something happening, So yeah, I don't know. You can't keep it pristine 100, all the time.
For sure. Cool. So I guess let's just jump right into it. All right. I have a bunch of questions here. So I just kind of want to start at the beginning. Just kind of, what was your musical upbringing, and where did it all start?
Sure. Well, let's see. The first instrument I ever learned to play was the violin. I played that for a few years. I started that in elementary school. I was in choir, and I really enjoyed singing a lot. And then I switched to piano. I actually inherited my piano from my aunt. She used to play the piano for silent films. And so when she passed, I inherited her piano, and that just, I don't know, like once I started there, I just, stopped playing the violin, and I focused on the piano. And then that was pretty much my main instrument. And then as I got older, I played like synths. I played in bands. I did a lot of singing as well, like blues, jazz, stuff like that. But yeah, that was my main instrument focus, was the piano.
Wow. So you have quite a wide variety of styles and genres in your background.
Mm-hmm.
Interesting. And I guess at a young age, you were developing your ear because you're playing violin, which I hear is extremely hard at first.
It sounds like animals dying. No, just But no, I actually, I think I was pretty good. I mean, I would win like ribbons and do like those competitions, like outside of actually playing, for the school. So I think I did okay. Like at least moved away. At least you could hear songs, it wasn't like, but I think I knew, like thinking back early on, I always had a good ear. And so I would always play a lot by ear too, which, was good in a lot of ways because it really it helped train my ear, but also it stifled me in other ways. Even like as I was learning to play the piano, because as a kid, I would kind of cheat myself. I didn't really look at it like that, but like looking back, I was like, yeah, I kind of cheated myself because I would have these piano lessons, and my piano teacher was like, you're going to play these classical pieces. And then I would say, okay, like we would alternate because I loved love ballads, and I thought they were just as dramatic. So we would alternate, between classical and love ballads. But then I would ask her to play it for me. And so that way, that's where the cheating myself part came in, because it got to the point where I would just remember like how it was supposed to sound and then play it. And I would look at the sheet music, but when I got stuck, I would reference what I remembered hearing and then look at the notes, obviously, to make sure I'm playing in the right key and all that stuff. But I relied heavily on my ear. So whereas, getting that training of, like really reading sheet music really fast, like I can read sheet music and stuff, but I was definitely more like, oh, okay, wait, how did that trill go or whatever? I'm like, okay. Or like, how did the rhythm go? And I would think back of how she played it. And that's how I would learn to play for the most part. So yeah.
I mean, that's super interesting to think
Hey,
about.
Dean. Sorry.
Yeah, that's super interesting to think about because, I think sheet music was invented as a way to communicate music so other people could play it. But ultimately, you do want to memorize it. So I don't know. I think you kind of sidestepped that whole thing, and, playing by ear. I don't know. I'm jealous of people that could play by ear. So
yeah, like, I mean, I guess there's like obviously give and take, like I did as I got older and I had a really strong ear, but as I got older and I would play with other pianists and they could just, hand them a piece of sheet music and then just sit right down and play. Whereas I had to take it and then go practice. It is just different, so my path obviously was different because of that, I think, but hey, it's all good.
yeah, cool.
Yeah.
Okay, so where did techno come in the picture?
Well, let's see, if you fast forward to my late teens. So I grew up in the Midwest in Wisconsin, and I was pretty fortunate. I got lucky getting this job at one of the record shops out there. And I worked there for a few years, but I worked up to being a buyer, which back then, like, that's like when cassettes and then vinyl and then CDs were just hitting the store. So yeah, I just kind of dated myself out there, but say how old I am. But yeah, no, like, so through that, like, seeing some of the music that would come in, and then that's also when raves were popping up, and then you would have to like get the little flyer and follow the phone call and like all that sort of stuff. Like it was like literally you really had to do that. That's the only way you're going to find out. And then I really love music, and so that sort of kind of pulled me in. So between working there and then also going out in the scene, kind of, it helped feed that music, that passion, for music. And it wasn't a lot of underground stuff where I worked. So I would go to other record stores, but through, I guess, working there and then going out, I would be able to navigate better, I guess, and figure out where to go and who to start listening to and what to look for and stuff like that. If that makes sense. Like, yeah. But that kind of took hold of me, I guess. So I would go out to the raves. And then as I got older, I would go down to Chicago a lot and go out. And that's when, like, Cashmere, was spinning, and like, those days, and like Felix the House Cat, and you're like, yeah. So yeah, those were the days. Yep, Dean, I love those days too.
Nice. So when did performing come into play, and did you DJ first or produce first, or kind of what was the order of that?
I mean, well, then I learned to DJ with vinyl. I had friends that were DJs, I was young. I dated somebody who was a DJ, all that jazz. And so like, we'd all kind of run in circles together and we'd drive down to Chicago and buy vinyl, and I bought some vinyl, and I was able to be fortunate enough to practice on techniques and learn how to mix, you know. But I didn't really pursue DJing then at all, actually. Like I played keys in some bands then and like funk bands, and I sang, but I wasn't really trying to DJ. Like that wasn't really a goal. Like I liked it. I liked that I learned to mix. I always bought vinyl, you know, and I always collected music in whatever form, whether it's vinyl, cassettes, CDs, but the DJing was never something that was like in the forefront of my mind that I wanted to do. Even fast forward to the past, I don't know, 15 years. Like I revisited DJing and I DJ'd and got into using CDJs, and I know how to DJ, but I've always enjoyed the live element. And the goal was always to play live in some way or another. So whether it was me singing for bands or playing keys, or fast forward to when I started to getting into producing and you know, producing electronic music and focusing on more house and techno, that it was always like, I want to play live in some capacity. So whether that's like hybrid set, drum machines, or what, like that was always like that was always the goal, I guess. Yeah.
Yeah, super fun.
Mm-hmm.
What did you start producing on?
GarageBand, then Logic, and then from Logic to Ableton.
Nice.
Yeah.
Do you remember which version of Logic you were on?
The very first one I got was, I think it was 7 or 8. Maybe it was 8.
Okay.
It was when you still had to get the box of CDs.
Yeah. I remember that.
Yeah.
Cool. That's interesting.
Yeah. And then I played a lot more piano back then too. Like, so yeah, I like the synths that came with Logic.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
They're really good stock plugins too.
Yeah.
Like the EQ and the Space Designer was really sick.
Oh yeah. And the ring, that ring modulator, the ring modulator, that plugin that was in there. I forget the exact name of it, but yeah, I still have Logic. I have the most current Logic now, and I'll open it up and use it a little bit, but not like how I use Ableton. But Logic is dope. Yeah, box of CDs.
Yeah.
Yeah, it was literally like a box. Like
it was sick though, because it came with a huge manual.
Yeah.
Manual. That was awesome.
Yeah.
Okay, so we'll get to Modular in a second, but
Cool.
What about your workflow with Ableton? Like, so you migrate to Ableton from Logic, and are you producing in there strictly in Ableton for a while, or?
Yeah, so the goal when I through that time, I guess, like I took breaks because I was working full time and things like that. So I would produce in Logic, and then I got really pulled into work, which is at the time was completely not related to music at all. And then I was like, but you know what? I really want to get back. I really need to follow my passion, because I've always been passionate about music. And so I really wanted to make a shift. And I was like, but I want to play live. And so that's when I was like, okay, I think that I'm going to really take it seriously and dive into learning Ableton, because of the fact that it has the capacity to use it with that live flow, with the scene view and just like the looping capabilities and that. And so that's when I was like, all right, I'm going to go back, take some classes, and actually learn how to use Ableton properly, and just the complete ins and outs of the DAW, and so that way, not only did I learn to produce in Ableton, I was able to build live setups using Ableton as well. And now I obviously I still use Ableton. I produce in it, but that's like my main production software. Like that's where I do. If I produce in the box, it's in Ableton. Although I will say, like, I have started using Bitwig too. Yeah, I like Bitwig. I like it. But if I have to say the DAW that I know the best, it would be Ableton. Yeah.
Okay. Sick,
Yeah.
sick. And so when did Modular start coming into the picture?
Let's see. Well, it's interesting because I've seen people perform with it, but it was sort of like this thing. Like I saw it, I heard it, and it was interesting, but I wasn't ready to go there yet, if that makes any sense. Like it was like in the background of my mind, but I was still honing in my skills in Ableton and just being able to build a live setup and incorporating hardware. But I think the big push, like I guess where the biggest two jumping off points were two things. I went to NAMM. I'd go all the time, and one year in particular, I remember I went to talk to noise engineering, and they were so nice, and they actually talked to me about patching, and I joke around with them because I'm friends with them now, but I say, like, I don't remember anything that they said to me, like, but I do remember how nice they were and willing to talk to me, and then the cool sounds that they were making, right? And then so keep in mind, like, I've heard of Modular at this point, I've seen people kind of perform with it, and then that was like, okay, I'm actually going to ask questions about it and start, watching videos, and they were really nice. And that was my first induction, I guess, into the synth community. And so it was like, I think it was like a really good positive experience, which made it even more enticing. You know what I mean? To like, to want to take the plunge, like, because it's scary, for anything, like learning something new, but how people were just so nice. And then I went to a party, to the Black Noise party, and I heard like Richard Devine, Sarah Chai, drum cell playing, drum cell playing with Luis Flores as Belief Defect. And I was like, yeah, I'm definitely ready for the sound design aspects of this. And so then less than a month later, I went and bought like a bunch of modules in my first case and stuff.
Sick. What,
Yeah.
around what year was this?
I'm trying to think. So 27. I always, living in California, the downfall is like there's no seasons. So how to distinguish time is like, I'm being from the Midwest, like at least you could say winter. Okay, like 2 winters ago, 2 years. I want to say it's 2017, maybe, or 20. I don't want to say 2018. I feel like that's too recent, but something right around in there. I've only really been using Modular, I guess. Let's see, 19, 20, 20. What year are we in? So 4 years, maybe. 4 years.
Yeah.
I'm completely sober, I swear. But it's just like time, like yeah. That's one thing. Getting used to living out here has always been kind of funny to me.
Yeah, especially the last few years also.
Yeah, like what year is it? Well, how much time has gone by? Yeah. Now you have me really thinking, like, let me do the math on that.
People always ask me, like, what day is it? And I just be like, it's Friday. It's Friday every day. Just losing track of the days of the week.
Somebody asked where are the modules. Okay, well, it's hard because I think the BIA had already been out for a while, but that was like one of my first modules. I actually talked to Derek at Perfect Circuit. So Perfect Circuit was recently opened. So it was like right around the time Perfect Circuit opened, because I went to their opening party. So that's sort of a good reference. So maybe that Perfect Circuit, I think, opened in like the middle of the year. And then maybe it was like that January for NAMM is then the following January after Perfect Circuit opened. So there's a good land. That's a good marking time. But yeah, so then that's when I got my first modules. I got the BIA, the Varigate Plus, the voltage block. Let's see, what did I get? I got a few 2 HP modules, a couple tip top modules. I was really into percussion too. So I kind of went in that direction. And then my first case was the Pittsburgh modular, that 208, the nice, like that wooden one. Yeah.
How tall is that? 6U?
Yep, 6U. Yep.
Okay, cool. Interesting. Yeah. Cool. That's cool. You know, that's cool because I've heard noise engineering is super, super cool like that. Someone was just like, yeah, I just talked to Chris and it's not a big deal, you know.
Yeah,
so cool.
yeah, they're super nice. I mean, everybody in the community is nice. That's one of the great things about it, you know. Modular, like even getting into it, you're still like, you have so many people that you can ask, and all those people are willing to give you an answer and take time. So like that's what makes it even better, you know. So but I see like Dean was like, people tell me that the Bitwig is a Techno DAW. Yeah, like the way Bitwig connects to modular makes it so cute. The way Techno, the way modular and can connect, the way they built Bitwig to connect with modular is like, it's hands down. Like, I think it's better than CV tools. You know, obviously Ableton has been around much longer, but I think when Bitwig came about, you know, it was like I believe it's somebody from Ableton at one point, and maybe some people from Logic, and they kind of came up with these ideas and kind of merged a bunch of things together. So being new and innovative, I think they started to encompass those things that maybe they wanted for themselves, which is always a good place to start making something, you know, is like how it could fill your palette or your workflow. But yeah, Bitwig is great for that. But he's like, I'm not learning another DAW. Yeah, hence why it's like a slower process for me. but I do like it. Yeah.
Cool. Yeah, Bitwig, they definitely like did some like pretty cool stuff. I remember the drum replacement software was really, really sick. They just had like a plugin for that. But really quick, can you say Trovarsi?
She's cute.
Can you say Trovarsi? There you go.
Adorable. That's funny.
I thought I locked the door, but apparently not.
It's all good. It's all good. But yeah, no, I mean, yeah, it's always good to try, you know, different things. Sample, yes. Definitely should sample your daughter's voice saying that.
For sure. Okay. And so are you performing at this point, like in 2017, 2018?
Yeah, at that point I was performing with a friend of mine. His name is Brian Markman, and we were performing as a duo called Forward. And we were, let's see, what were we would build hybrid setups using Ableton. And so it was a lot of, and we'd have our own 2 separate setups, and we would play together. And a lot of time it would start from like nothing, and we would just build writing back and forth, playing with each other. And you know, that of course, like he had his setup built, and he really took the time to like dial in and build instruments in Ableton. And then I would build, you know, we choose, you know, like, hey, I love percussion and like effects and different, you know, elements like that. So I focused more on that. And then he was more into writing like bass lines and things. So he focused more on that. But then we would just kind of come together and jam, and it kind of turned into this thing. But I would bring in drum machines or like a synth or something like that. But then later it turned into bringing in the modular.
Yeah, sick. Sorry, can you hear my daughter crying?
No, it's all good.
Hang on just a second.
I'll answer the question in the chat. Hey, thanks guys for being here. By the way, if you have questions, drop them in. So it says, how much time between buying your first modules and doing your first performance with Eurorack? Ooh, so the first modules, like I said, they're more percussive based, and I want to say less than a year. I want to say it was less than a year that I performed with my modular and bringing it and encompassing it in the setup in some way. Because playing with him, he's a great musician, so it gave me that room to always change my setup. So it kind of became this thing that I would do because I was always trying different drum machines or different modules. And so then it was like, I'm bringing my modular this time. And so it sort of became this running joke that every time we played a show together, like I always had something different about my setup. And so it would slowly evolve into like, maybe it was like the machine, like the rhythm with a few modules. And then pretty soon it was like not the rhythm with Ableton and like all percussion modules, you know? And then later on that summer, I played like a 6 a.m. party, like direct support for drum cell, and it was all modular. And then I had like a 12U modular case using a Digitact and a TB03 and like a DJ mixer and stuff, like. But yeah, I hope that answered your question.
So
hey, India.
Are you doing drums? You're doing drums in Eurorack right now?
Right now, sometimes I guess it's back and forth. Like recently, like the most recent, my wife, Space Racer, people know her as, we built the Re 909, which is the Den Syncs like replica. And so now I've mainly been using that, but I have used drums and stuff in like other percussive modules and things like that in the Eurorack. But right now I want to build, I just tore apart like a bunch of cases and stuff. And my goal now is to do voices and modulation and other interesting things in the modular and then use the Re 909. Oh, it's awesome, Dean. I'm going to have to bring it over so you can try it out.
Yeah, that kit looks awesome. I don't know. They're not really readily available though, right?
He does runs sometimes, so there might be one run, but it took us like a couple months. You know, it was like a lot of soldering hours. And I have to say that Space Racer did most of that. I got lucky being that I conveniently had a bunch of shows. So I was traveling. And so while I was traveling, she would get together with our other SoCal Society friend, Justin. He was building his. And so they did a lot of soldering sessions together. And so by the time I came back, it was almost done. And then I kind of stepped in and helped and I actually did do some soldering on it and then put the last final parts together and stuff like that. But yeah, it's definitely no joke. It's not like something that you start out with soldering for the first time. That's for sure. Like, yeah. But yeah.
Have you done any other DIY modules?
Yes, I built. I forget his name. His name is Abe up in, I think it's AI Synthesis or something like that. Please forgive me for not knowing if he's watching. But he makes really good modules, and it was like a low pass filter. I built a ton of stuff. At this point, well, just to give you a little background, I'm a co-founder of Southern California Synth Society, and that's one of the main things that we do is we get together and solder together and build. And Justin, Synthrotech on Instagram, he's really good and he's at every build. So it creates an environment that even if you've never soldered before in your life, which a lot of people that have come to solder with us haven't, it's great because they feel like they can try something. And so now these people are now building pedals and doing different things because he's able to help them. And if you mess it up, he can help you fix it, which is like the key, because I feel like a lot of people, they try to solder, and it's hard to solder by yourself for the first time, especially if have never done like any type of circuitry before at all. And then to think like, did you mess it up or not? So we like to do these events where people can come and solder, and then he tests it, and you can ask him questions to make sure that you're not, messing it up. I think if it weren't for him, I would probably have soldered a lot less, just, because of that, like due to time and just, how it is, like your channel, like you're making videos, you're performing all these things. And then the last thing I need is to like focus on a module I can't finish soldering because I messed it up. So it's like, but I know like, oh, Justin will be there. So it's like, he's like my false sense of security, or my security, I guess.
Yeah.
Not really false sense, but security.
Have you built an MS-22?
What happened?
Have you built a MS-22?
No.
The 3-tom filter?
I didn't. I bought it.
Okay.
Yeah, I bought it. And then some things I just buy it because, like you have to have time to solder, and I don't always have a lot of time. So now that I know how to solder and things like that, I choose the things that will like, if it's something, if I need it right away, I'll just buy it, or like have some sort of video or do something like in those lines. And then, but if it's something like the Re 909, like that to me is like worth building and taking the time, so it's like I have to pick and choose, what I can make time for, I guess, if that makes sense.
Yeah, totally makes sense.
Yeah.
So Noodling on Wires is one of my homies, and there's a joke that the MS-22 is cursed, or at least for me it is.
Why?
I've built a lot of stuff, and for whatever reason, I've attempted 3 MS-22s, and none of them work.
Oh shit!
Yeah.
Is it from? Have you messaged the guy? Like,
not yet.
He's super responsive. I mean, if I were you, I'd reach out to him.
Yeah, he told me to yeah, I did actually. He told me to reflow everything, but I don't know if that's the issue or not. Maybe. I don't know. I've built a lot of stuff, and for some reason, I just cannot get along with the MS-20. So I have 3 derelict MS-22s that I'm just gonna like give away once.
Send it to Justin.
Okay.
I send it to Justin and see if he can like fix it. Like we had an issue with the Re 909. Like the attack wasn't working. Like everything was perfect. It was working, all this stuff, and except for the attack. And people were like, he wrote in the threads like, oh, like, are you sure? Like, can you hear? I'm like, I can hear it. Like, I know when the attack on a drum machine is working or not. Like, and then we compared it to his, and I was like, you hear that? You hear that? It was like 4 a.m. at this time when we finished the build. And I was like, do you hear? I don't hear that. You hear that in the attack? And he's like, okay, I don't hear it on yours. But then it wasn't working. So he ended up taking it, unsoldering parts of it, and just simply soldering it again. Like, so maybe it's something like what he's saying is like, something like that. I don't know.
Yeah. Electronics is like, it's like black magic. I don't know what's going on. I can solder. That's it. Except for MS-22s. That's so cool though that you guys built the RE 909, and I mean it sounds incredible. I think.
Yeah.
Have you been able to A/B it? I mean,
not to an act like a 909.
Yeah.
No, I mean, no. I mean, I guess I know some people I could, but
I don't know that it matters.
So far, so far, I mean, I like it. I like the sound of it. I have a TR-09, and like, there's definitely they sound similar. Not saying that, oh, that's the 909, but obviously it is Roland. But no, I haven't really taken it to, yeah.
Okay, I was just wondering. Let's see. So your DIY. Let's see. I'm trying to order these questions. Okay, so can you kind of tell us about the scene in LA for techno specifically?
Wait, what do you? Sure, that's like a super broad question.
No, I mean like there's events. Okay, so for example, now are there events going on? Are people showing up? Like how many people? That kind of thing.
Oh
Especially
yeah,
now.
yeah. As soon as things could open up to a degree, things did. Like there's protocols, so you have to like show like vax cards, or you have to show negative proof of COVID test within a certain amount of time. At first, there's definitely masks mandated. The last party I played, the Reform Party, which was the Labor Day party, and you had to show your vaccination or proof of negative COVID test. And then most people were wearing masks. There's some people that were not. People were wearing them, not wearing them, depending on if you're in like a more open aired space, because there was some area that was outdoors. There's some indoors. It wasn't like required, but people were, I think that it was just, in some cases it was probably the smarter thing to do is to wear it because some rooms were much smaller and not as open, and then that you were closer to people, but at least they do have those protocols for sure. And things are open now. Like every weekend there's something happening, like going on. Yeah.
And so are you kind of set for the year? Are you booked up, ready to go?
I mean, no, not entirely. Not entirely. I have been making some shifts. Like I've been focusing a lot on the education aspects, and I have like I started a Patreon this past year, and I've been working with a lot of one-on-ones and Zoom sessions, which I really enjoy, and taking a different approach to other styles of music. I mean, I love techno, I love house. I'm always going to make that in some capacity, but I'm also focusing on other genres and stuff like that too, and just like sound design and things, like in exploring modules and doing like more tutorials for my YouTube channel and stuff like that. And yeah.
That's one thing that stood out on your website that I wanted to point out was that, you put tutorials as your first tab. So education is clearly an important thing for you.
Yes. Yeah.
Cool.
Education is super important for me, like in every aspect, like collaborative, just the camaraderie, like working with people. Like I really like that. It comes natural for me. So I just sort of found that avenue. I think it's hard sometimes in the techno industry. I have I talked to this Gia, which he is like one of the founders of 6 a.m., which is one of the largest underground promoters in Los Angeles. And he actually manages me. And, we have these conversations that, do you know that by not DJing, you're not going to get as many gigs? And I'm like, I know that, and he's, we talk about that, and I'm okay with that because I've gone through the whole, like, taking DJ gigs, which I had fun doing, but if something's not like really what you have your whole heart into, you know what I mean? Like I enjoy playing live. I feel like playing live is way easier than DJing. And that's just my, like, to me that it comes more natural. It's way easier for me to play live than it is to DJ, like each has its own, things to learn and like to be good at. And like DJing isn't, to be a good DJ, you know what I mean? Like not just mixed two records together, but actually take control of the dance floor and put people on a journey. And like, and they're two very different paths. And that's just, and so, yeah, so I tried it. I've played hybrid setups. I still like to do that, like do like a hybrid set, like where I'll bring like some gear and do some DJing, or at least Ableton with some other hardware. But playing live to me is where it's at. And so with that comes less gigs, you know, and forging my own path. And part of my own path, which came natural for me, was teaching and collaborating with people, and that just sort of started creating my path for me, like with the videos and the tutorials and stuff like that. Yeah.
Oh yeah, that's super cool. So, you know, when you perform as a live act, you know, what is your mindset? Because like you can just focus on what you're doing and not worry about the floor, and just, you know, I guess trust your music. Versus where a DJ is like constantly aware of the floor, and like the next tune is, you know, you're talking about floor control. So like, does that come into play in your sets?
I'd like to think so. Yeah. I mean, it depends where I'm playing, and if it's like, if I wrote music to play, you know, it's sort of like, I think too, when people go to hear a live act, it's a different approach into the room, you know, like it's just, whether it's consciously or subconsciously. But at the same time, ironically, I approach my live sets like a DJ, you know, like I try to, when I write music or play layers, or at least if I'm doing some sort of improv thing, that it's got to change like within a few minutes, you know, like it's got to change like each song. And I use that because I'm in the song mode, you know, like has to be completely different to the next thing. So it sounds like a DJ set, if that makes like sense, as opposed to like a super long composition of similarly sounding for like a whole 20 minutes or an hour. You know, I try to approach it like, okay, this has got to change. Like I'll play, if sometimes I'll even play a live set and I'll put it my phone like with the lap timer, because, you know, like modular, you're noodling around. Like I could listen to the same sequence for like 20, 30 minutes and not even phase me, you know, like Space Racer will walk in and do, I've heard that, you know, like how long, you know, she'll come into the room, like from doing something and I'm sitting here doing something totally different, walked away from my modular, and it's the same sequence like going on. Like, so I don't want to do that to the people that I'm playing for. So I'll have like a lap, like I'm with my phones, and I can like, okay, hit the lap. So then I know, like, all right, I've been playing this particular style of sequence or something for 3 minutes or whatever. I better start thinking about transitioning to something else. So I think that helps, you know, like I would like to think that helps, you know, that helps people enjoy my sets. But, you know, it's always learning something. I think India asked, like, what's my perfect modular setup? I don't know. I saw that. My dream modular setup. Should I answer it? Are you there, Tom? Oh, you're muted.
Yeah. No, I was looking at the question too.
Oh.
What do you think?
Oh, I don't know. That changes all the time. Like that's probably like why I'm always rotating stuff, and like the joke is that I never play with the same setup more than once. My dream modular setup.
That's fun though. That like keeps it so interesting and fun.
Yeah. There's definitely pros and cons. I mean, you know, like somebody like Lady Starlight, who's like plays with pretty much the same setup since, you know, like she doesn't make too many drastic changes. Her changes to swapping out modules, it's very strategic, which is smart, you know, like, and versus me, like who's completely will change my setup, you know, literally every show. And it's about learning your modules too, you know, but I think the teaching part sort of helps because I'm learning the modules too, aside from just learning to perform with them, if that makes sense. But to get back to the question, I don't know if I have a dream modular setup. I'll tell you this though. I like a ton of filters, so it definitely has a ton of filters. Like my last built case had 10 filters in it. Had 10 filters, so I have definitely a lot of filters. And if I could change anything about my case, like my physical case, I would like a 14U case. 94 HP 14U would be like ideal case for me. Like if I could snap my fingers, because right now I have like a 94 but 12U, I have a 12U 104, but if I could get that extra 1U row in each the top and bottom, that would be like, at least I can answer that, India. Hopefully I can like the case. Case and tons of filters.
Okay, so with the filters, is that for character and or for control, like filtering out lows on certain instruments, that kind of thing?
Both. Yeah. Especially like playing live, you don't really know what the room is going to be like until you get there for a sound check. So I like to have a voice per filter, and that way I can, shape it or put the sound at a different frequency. If it's, for example, if the hats, it's too loud, like too harsh in the room, maybe I can round them out with like low pass filter or something like that. But also it does give character too with the modulation, which I really like. And that makes them sound more interesting, I think. Some people have a lot of VCAs, but I prefer to have a lot of filters.
And so is that a big problem in rooms? Just the, no sound treatment, or, all the problems that come with big rooms and concrete floors, that kind of stuff?
I think so. Yeah. I mean, even like with mastered music, can you imagine? I've gone to rooms, I'm sure you have, or people watching have been in a room and you're just like high end, they just like, it's so loud. It just feels like it's like stabbing your eardrums. And that's like mastered music compressed, right? So imagine like your modular and hardware is just raw, unless you bring like a little compressor, which I recently have started doing, but like that's just raw sound. So anything that you can put in your case to help you get ahead of the curve, I feel like the better, so the more, for me, it's filters. So that way I can have a little bit more control over the sound.
Okay.
Yeah.
So you talked about kind of like a song going song to song. What have you found, like sequencer wise, that facilitates that workflow well?
Sequencers? Ooh. Dean, I spend more time getting sequencers in sync than anything else. Yeah. Right now, my sequencer, like my ultimate sequencer, is the vector sequencer. I'm sure people have heard me talk about it, work with Jim, just patching and talking about it and making, as a user and a performer, like suggestions and things. And yeah, like so far, I mean, I have other sequencers that I like. Like I love using the Metron as my gate sequencer, but I really am digging into the vector sequencer right now. It just, because it does scratch the itch of like the whole hybrid setup capacity because of the USB B-A connectivity and all the MIDI IO, that I can sequence a DAW, I can sequence my hardware, I can do program changes, I can do all those things to help streamline my performance with this sequencer, aside from being able to sequence on it. You know what I mean? The ARPs and all the stuff with it, but just the connectivity alone, like, yeah.
Could you give like a percentage of like how much is prepared versus what's improvised?
I think it varies. It really does. Like with the sequencer, it does give me the chance to just come in and start with nothing because it's very visual, so I can quickly write a sequence. I can generate a sequence and then like randomly and then start changing it on the fly to suit better what I'm looking for. But if it's something like a show, like to me, like for example, I mentioned earlier I played Reform. I wrote a lot of music for that show because I just didn't want to. I wanted to be prepared. So I left room for improvisation, and I did do some improvisation and wrote and played some things on top of things that were already written. But there was definitely like a skeleton of music there, and then I could take it to wherever I wanted to go because nobody, what if I had an off moment or like, and like the joke that when I told you I used to play with Brian and we would play like together and we'd start from scratch and he would look at me and be like, nobody wants to listen to you program hi-hats, Shonda. like they're standing around waiting for you to like throw the beat down, And so like it became like this joke, He's like, well, nobody wants to stand around and listen to somebody program like their drum sequence. And so like I've learned to like build like skeleton layers and create a space for me to build stuff onto, like to add to. But
I need a friend like that.
He's a very good friend. I've learned a ton of stuff from him. He's actually an instructor at Musicians Institute now. He teaches like mixing and mastering and all this kind of other classes and stuff. But yeah, no, he's great. I've learned a ton of things from him.
That's awesome.
Yeah.
So talk us through like preparing for a gig. And I'm just trying to think of, people who want to start playing out, what kind of like, your workflow, maybe some tips.
Sure. For me, picking the hardware and the tech side probably takes almost as long than to actually write the music, if that makes sense. Like making sure, like I'll go through like, depending on where I'm going to play, so if it's like local, I might want to play with more. It gives me the luxury of playing with more toys. I mean, like more hardware. I'm like, oh, okay, I can bring like all kinds of stuff, so then like I like, what do I want to use? So then it's like it's a process to figure out. So it's like I'm building my band. That's how I look at it. Like, what band member am I going to bring to this show? So whether it's the dig attack or the rhythm, and then that includes like choosing my modules and choosing the sound that I want to go for. And then once I figure out all the tech, and I know Dean mentioned earlier, like getting things to sync, like once I sort out all of that, and a lot of that is just like, so through that is like writing music and scrapping it because it's just putting proof to concept, if that makes sense. Like if I'm like, okay, I want to use this thing with these modules, then I'm like, okay, like I'll build my case in modular rig in modular grid, and then I'll physically build it and I'll jam on it. And if it's like, nope, I don't want to work, that's workflow is not going to work for me for this, and I'll scrap it, and then start over. So a lot of the tech and that side takes longer. And then once I have everything sorted, like I'm okay, this is going to be the setup for this show. Then it's like, okay, now I'm going to start writing music. Like now I have all the band members, who's going to do what, like, and then there's like where the fun, like where it's like, okay, now I'm just going to start writing patterns, writing different sounds, patching to, be able to maneuver between sounds and things like that. But that for me is like my general approach to a show for sure. That was a long answer. Sorry.
No, that's great. That's great info. Great advice too. It's funny you call them band members because we're just talking with Alex Nasty Nachos.
Yeah.
We were just talking about like what got us into producing electronic music. And it was like, well, the other band members never showed up on time. So you're like taking these new roles and you just get sick of it. And you're like, I'm just going to do it by myself.
Yeah.
Anyway.
Yeah, no, he's great. I played with him twice, and that was very improvisational. Like, we were like, I got some patterns, he's like, I got some cool patterns, and we're like, all right, what's cool? Like, we'll just make sure we know what key we're playing in and go from there. And it's like, yeah.
Yeah, so that's actually one of the questions. So you talked about doing back-to-back performances with other modular artists, including Nasty Nachos and recently Sean Cruda. Is that
yes.
Okay. Yep. And so the question is how does coordinating jams like that go down? Like, do you agree on, oh, I'm going to do drums, or, that kind of thing, or you do this and I'll do, or it's just organic, or that kind of thing. So,
I mean, for the most part, it's pretty organic, but it's also like for Alex, for example, we're like, he has drums, I have drums. We had some, I had synths patched. He had synths patched voices. And so then we kind of went back and forth like, oh, like I have this cool drum pattern. And then I'd be like, I got the perfect bass line for that, and then and so it was more like just working back and forth. Like, so so going back and forth with Sean, it varies, like, because a lot of times he'll have a hybrid setup of his own in the sense of DJing and Ableton or something, or like pieces of music in Ableton where he's chopped them up and then he's incorporated a bunch of his own stuff. And then like maybe he'll loop in a track or something with Tractor, So it's like, I guess I'll fill in whatever is missing. Or I'll have like a drum pattern too. And then he'll be like, oh, okay, I got the perfect, like thing to put over the top of that. So a lot of it's like that, like communication, and then just having that chemistry, I guess, like, I don't think it's there for everyone, that you try to jam with, like, as much, even if you want it to be, like, even if somebody's a really good musician, like, it just takes that, like, seeing if you have the chemistry to read each other. And then I think it's helpful that Alex and Sean both have DJ'd and I have DJ'd. So you kind of know, like, okay, like when something's like, you know what I mean? Like a fill or like a breakdown is supposed to happen, and you can say to each other, let's break it down. And then like, they know what it means. You know what I mean? Like, so that like, it helps because then it's like throwing that DJ style of playing into it. So yeah.
Yeah, you said it was like one of you would turn around and be like, we're in E minor.
Yeah.
Like that.
Yeah.
That's cool.
Yeah, we have to, or be like, what key are you in? Like, oh, I got some for that. Or you'd write something for it, like he'd have like some really fat bass line, and like, I'd be like, oh, let me write like a little lead to go over the top of that, And so that's where the ear, I guess, from practicing, like having the practice of having a good ear comes in.
Yeah. And that's like very jazz too.
Yeah.
Jamming and playing off each other. That's sick.
Yeah.
That sounds like a lot of fun. I've never gone back to back with anybody like that.
It's actually really good practice too, to like get to know your modules. You know what I mean? Whether you're sequencer, or it helps me quickly get to know like the weak and strong points of modules for the way that I play. I don't want to say for the module itself, but the way I approach playing. I'm like, oh, that module is cool for my, spacier, dark ambient patches, but I got to use this one to perform with because, I can change things faster or whatever, like, so that it really helps you put the proof of concept, into play. Someone's like, ask my thoughts on real drums, using a real drummer. I think that would be fun. I've done that like once briefly jamming with Frey. She's a professional drummer, and that was a lot of fun. When I was in New York, we just did like a quick jam, and I like the sound of that. There's a group that I think they're called like floor play, or they were floor play or floor plan, not to be confused with Robert Hood floor plan, but it was like a woman and a guy, and she had this massive modular setup, and then he was an amazing drummer, and he was so tight in rhythm, like on time, and like it sounded so good. They played Movement, I think 2017, if anyone wants to look it up to see who I'm talking about. But it was great. It sounded fantastic, I thought. Like the whole electronic element with like these live raw drums. Yeah, it was pretty sick.
Cool.
Yeah.
Noodling on Wire said hand foot signals. It's like a jazz thing. So how do you go about picking out modules? Because there's so many options out there, and many of them do the same thing differently or different workflows. Just kind of what are some of your deciding factors? Because you want to be cost efficient.
My deciding factors, let's see. I pick out things that I can perform with. Like, so basically what type of connectivity, how modulatable, I guess it is, like how much CV, not like the placement of knobs. I'm super visual. So for example, like the sequencer is a good one to take a look at. I like the Vector because I can see the notes and I'm familiar with music, like the notation. So it's easier for me to dial in like, a fifth, C to G or whatever, a perfect fourth or whatever, to dial all that in. And I like to see it. I like the Metron for gates because of the visual. So visual is for me, and then being able to change things on the fly and not having like a ton of like button combinations for stuff. Because I like to be able to work, doing something with one hand while working another modular two or the mixer with my other hand. So that's super important. Performability, playability then. And then, yeah, I mean, aside from the obvious, like the sound, like depends on what type of sound I'm looking for. But I think first is like performance, like can I use it to perform with, and the flexibility of the module, like in terms of what it can do. I think when I first started buying modules, I told you I was more into percussion. And so I bought a lot of percussive modules, which they sound really good. But what else could I really do with those? Which is fine. You know what I mean? Like if you have the space for that, or if that's, but then I started to think like what I needed to stretch my modules to do more in the space that I had, if that makes sense. So like I told you, like I bought the BIA and then I bought like a bunch of percussion modules. I sold some of the percussion modules once I got to know how to patch to get percussion out of other modules versus like the BIA. A lot of people use that as a kick. I've done videos on how you can use it as a kick and percussion, but in my case, I never use it as a kick. It's always a lead and a bass sometimes, but more often like a lead line, so, but if I needed a kick, I could get a kick out of that module fast, and that's the other thing is like, is the module like, can you understand it to dial it quickly enough to get somewhere else? Or is it like all these, I try to stay away from a multitude of trying to remember a bunch of colors and like, like if it's pink and it's turned counterclockwise a certain thing, like, like chances are I'm not using that module to perform with, like it would just be trying to remember that sort of stuff. I don't want to think about that when I'm playing it. Yeah.
Okay, cool.
Yeah.
So what is okay, we can do either or, your favorite module or your first module, whichever one you want to answer, or both.
Oh, well, one of my first modules I think is, like I said, is the BIA. Yeah, I now own two, and I think that it's worthy of that. Like I played an entire song with just the one BIA and a bunch of utilities, so the flexibility, it goes to that flexibility and being able to play it and perform with it. My favorite module, I guess I would have to say my favorite module right now. Oh, it's a toss up. My favorite module is either my performance mixer or my vector sequencer. But they're both, in my case, 98% of the time. Unless I'm playing like a tiny but mighty case where I'm trying to show like how to get a techno jam out of just like a small footprint. But if in my performance case, I have both of those in there.
Yeah.
Yeah.
The performance mixer is incredible. It's like, it's a much bigger mixer than what you see.
Oh, for sure. Yeah, I definitely take advantage of the A, B, and routing various sound like voices into them and using that, even playing that, performing with the switch to bring in different sounds depending on what's patched into A and what's patched into B. I'll perform like flipping it back and forth or something like that too. Yeah, it's fun.
Okay. What about, have you had a favorite place that you performed? Like, have you ever had a favorite gig? Yeah.
Ooh. That's a tough one because they're all like, different places have different different feelings and different like sound in the room. I would have to say one of my favorite performances was the one with Nasty Nachos in Denver. When we played for like an hour and 40 minutes. And we could have kept going and people wanted us to keep going, but it was like after the time already and the bar had to shut down, but we could have kept going. Yeah. That was probably like that was like one of my favorites.
Sounds super fun.
Yeah.
That's on YouTube, isn't it?
I don't think so.
Oh.
No. Yeah, because it was like in a club there. Yeah, it wasn't streamed. It wasn't streamed.
And you guys just played at KnobCon too, is that right?
Yeah, we played at KnobCon. Yeah, we played it was like a little more laid back than the first time because of, environment. You play for the place, but it was fun. We had a lot of fun.
Cool. Yeah. So I'm just checking on you. How you feeling?
I'm good.
Okay, cool. We got a bunch more questions. All right. Let's see. So you are super busy. In addition to your own music, you have a number of projects such as the SoCal Synth Society and Modulation Sound Lab. Could you tell us about those and what they are all about? We kind of touched on SoCal Synth Society already, but yeah.
Sure. Well, yeah, just SoCal, just to say, like, I started that with my wife, Space Racer, and Abe Mora, he's known as Earth 626. And it was very organic. It was just like, we should get together. I needed a cable. I knew Abe, but I didn't know him that well and realized he lived so close to me. And I was like, we should get together and solder, and I was just like getting into modular at that time. And we did. And it just kind of turned into this thing like organically. We're like, oh, we should invite people. We should, like, it was like, oh yeah, we should have people come and all this sort of stuff. And it was very organic that way, which I really appreciate that. So it just kind of grew. And now it's like this community where we do workshops, gigs, like shows, jams. We have a NAMM party now every year. And we're having it again this upcoming NAMM in June, which is moved to June. But so that's SoCal. We do frequency shift, which is awesome, and support other synth societies. And then as far as Modulation Sound Lab, it's actually like I just started that project earlier this year with a friend of mine, and it's now like evolving even more. So like she's been starting to kind of travel more now that things are opening up. And I also want to kind of dive in and take it a little bit further with even more tutorials. So I've actually just rebranded it right now just to kind of help streamline things, because I'm sure, as you know, and I see some people in the channel in the chat that have YouTube channels and do other things. Sometimes like you want to streamline the admin side of things so you can have more time to give to people that are watching your videos and want to sign up for tutorials. So it's now just under Trovarsi, and it's called the Sound Lab. But you'll see more of that like on my channel, on my YouTube channel, and then on my socials. But then it's still like the Patreon is growing even more now, because now I'm able to offer more tutorials and have some guests come on, which would be kind of awesome to have you come, and we can talk about that later offline. But just stuff like but just offering other tutorials and not just for modular. It's not just for modular. It's it's hardware, it's iPad, it's DAWs, all of that stuff, like kind of incorporating everything together. And there are some people that don't even have modular that are in there, that are there to learn how to use the DAW or to use, pedals, so it's not, I want it to be for all musicians, all electronic musicians, not just specifically not modular specific. If that makes sense.
Yeah, that sounds super cool.
Yeah.
And after, I'll be sure to post the links. Which, by the way, TrovarsiOfficial.com is your website, and
yes.
Everything is linked on there. Is that right?
Yes. Yep.
Okay, cool. So that's posted in the description for sure. We'll get some more. Okay, so can you tell us about your artist name? How did you decide and settle on it? Because as many of us know, it can be very difficult and fickle to find, a good name. And what is the meaning behind your name?
Sure. I used to have another moniker, which I'll leave it there. And I had stepped away. I'd mentioned before I was working in a different field, completely different from music. And I was kind of pulled into that and pulled away from music for a period of time. And just, life is just happening, and when I started to return to music and really make a conscious effort to be like focused and say, this is really what I want to do, with that came a shift and just life, and I'm half Sicilian, and Trovarsi, it's Italian. It means to be or to find oneself. And I was like, that, I felt like that's what I want my name to be. It's like suits perfectly, because I was coming to that point where it's like, I really need to have music in my life and really focus. So that's a part of finding myself, but also like, not to get too philosophical and deep, but like through the music journey, you're always like learning or trying to find yourself. So I was like, I feel like this is a very appropriate name for me. And so then I made sure no one else had it. and then I took it.
That's awesome. That's way cooler than my story. We won't talk about that. Okay, cool. So what or who are some of your inspirations?
Ooh, musically? Let's see. Well, I mentioned Lady Starlight earlier, and I think she's awesome. Like, I think that she's really laid foundation for just women performing live techno. Like, I really admire her. Like, she's been doing a lot of things even before getting into hardware and modular, and I respect her for sure. And her music, I like that she plays live. Other musical influences would be, another one would be like Non-Compliant. I not only like her production, but her DJ style, you know, and like, and what she plays, like not only what she produces, but also how she DJs, like the flow of her mixes and her lives, like when she plays, like when I've gone to see her live and all that stuff. Like I love that old school jack and techno. I'm a 90s, you know, I'm a raver, like back in when it was only dance music before techno was full officially, you know, like becoming techno. Like I like that sound. And yeah, like, so she's definitely a huge influence on the type of music that I like to make and play. I don't know, like there's so many. Surgeon, of course. Then I don't know.
I mean, I guess
Yeah.
one of the
There's people like that are like, like I'm always inspired. Like my wife, she's like super smart and is like, like does like a lot of things aside from being a vet, like into space and like is into modular, and she's very driven. So it's like, that definitely tells me like I can't just be sitting around doing nothing. Like, not that I would, but you know what I'm saying? Like, it's like nice, I feel like we're both very busy into things that we like to do. And it's like, that's like inspiring too, that she's like working towards to get to her personal goals and stuff like that. So it's like inspirational and supportive for me to be able to do the same thing. So that's for sure.
cool.
Yeah.
Did you say vet into space? Like she's into
She would like to probably be a vet in space, but like, yeah, no, she's a veterinarian, but also she is like, does research for analog space missions, and she's very much into the space sector and wanting to, like, she's educating herself and getting into that sector. And so, yeah, like that's like a whole other thing that she has going on. Like,
wow.
She'd probably be better at explaining it than me. Like she's like super science nerd, but yeah, yeah.
Let's see. I just got a few more questions actually.
Yeah.
So it seems that artists now have to wear many hats. Can you talk about marketing and some of the things that you do that have worked? Because you are killing the Instagram game, by the way. Um, your website is super professional. Like everything about you is super professional, and I have learned a lot from that. Just
Thank you.
observing. Yeah. And yeah, so if you could just touch on that, maybe give some advice.
Sure. I mean, it goes back to that streamlining, I guess. Like I've definitely had to learn from others, as well. Like that's why, like, ask away. Like I ask people things all the time too, and that's another reason why I like the whole name change. For example, from Modulation Sound Lab to just Trovarsi and the Sound Lab, and it's just being able to kind of streamline stuff so I can get to the goal, which is making videos for people and doing tutorials or performing, and not so much getting bogged down in the other things that we have to do. But I also have this project which helps with Trevor, aka Noise Hack, and another member, which we're going to be announcing something shortly. I can't really say right now, and but that was where the video aspect comes in, and that's another thing. Like I believe in collaborations, and with that, I also believe like when you're working on a project is knowing your strengths and your weaknesses, and so like working with somebody like, for example, Trevor, who loves video and editing and things like that, and it really allows me to come and do what I like to do, which is I like to talk to people and be in front of the camera and play with gear and he likes to too, but it's like it's a very complementary thing. And then the third aspect that's coming into that, which I can't announce, but it will be announced soon, is another layer of that. And it's like, and that helps too. I don't know if that answers your question. I hope that answers your question. But like, yeah, and consistency. You know, I try to be consistent. I feel like there are definitely other people out there that do a way better job with consistency than myself. I'll even mention Dean. He's in the thread right now. Electronic Sounds Audio. His videos are always on point. He's always putting out great content. He's a great educator. He's super nice, you know, and like he's just like consistently like he's like consistently putting out good stuff, you know? And so that's like, I've always been told that consistency is the key, you know, like, and I've been just trying to like, and sticking to perseverance, you know, like that's the other thing, you know, it's like, you know, you have your channel, it's a lot of work, like making the video, deciding the patch, like a lot. I think that when people skim through videos, they don't realize like all the behind the scenes work that goes into making that video for somebody to enjoy, you know, down to like setting lights, making a patch, knowing what you're going to talk about, you know. So like you're killing it. Like I've watched your videos too. They're great. Like the Kraken videos, love it. Like
thanks.
They're awesome. You know, and yes, I say just keep doing you. And like that's the other thing, like stay true to whatever it is that you're doing that you like to do, you know. So you're like the setups and like what you're doing, like it's great. And like that shows, I think anytime people try to do something that's just for the sake of, I don't know, like doing something, I guess, like they'll only be doing it for so long, you know, and then it'll end. Like you can tell like Dean enjoys what he's doing. You can tell that you enjoy what you're doing. You can tell that Enrique, you know, like I knew Enrique when his channel only had a couple thousand followers. Now look at him, you know, and it's like his consistency and his genuine personality, you know. So I'd say be consistent, be true to yourself, and try to streamline the things that take you away from doing what it is that you're ultimately trying to do. I think that, right?
Yeah, that's perfect. That's great.
Yeah.
Great advice. Okay. Is there anything else you want to add? Just anything.
No, I mean, no, like I think that we covered a lot. I want to say thank you for everyone that tuned in. I really appreciate it. Hopefully I answered the questions. I tried to keep reading the chat. So I hope I got them all.
Yeah. If anybody has any last questions, now's the time. And I know there's a delay in the chat, but so while we're waiting just a minute for some questions, what's the best way to connect with you where people can see and hear your work?
Cool. I would say like look at my website. I'm always on Instagram, you know, like so people DM me there, IG, and check out my website because there you can see like my YouTube channel, my sample packs, links to my music, all that good stuff. Yeah.
Do you have a primary platform?
One that I like to use specifically? I like Instagram the best.
Okay.
Yeah. I mean, I post on YouTube, but it's very like, it's not as interactive. So if you're looking to interact with me, probably Instagram would be the way to go. But I do enjoy obviously putting my stuff on YouTube and all that sort of stuff. Yeah.
Okay. Sick.
Cool.
Yeah, I don't see any questions. Thank you everybody for the comments. Thanks for hanging out. Thank you, Trovarsi, for taking the time. Much appreciation.
Thank you. And check out the Patreon if anybody's, you know, looking for tutorial stuff. That'd be awesome.
Yeah, we'll throw all those links in the description. All right.
Cool. Awesome.
Well, I guess that's it. Thank you so much.
All right.
We'll see you around.
Thanks for having me. I appreciate it.
All right. See you, everybody.
Bye.